In yet another intense day of ex-policeman Derek Chauvin's trial, jurors heard witness testimonies including that from George Floyd's girlfriend Courtney Ross and paramedics who responded to the scene on May 25th last year. Now, Courtney was the first person who personally knew Floyd to testify at the murder trial of Derek Chauvin. Floyd's girlfriend testified describing how they both struggled with opioid addiction. She told the court that at times they both took prescribed painkillers and at other times they illegally obtained opioids. Prosecutors from the Minnesota Attorney General's office have told the jury that they will hear the evidence to contradict this statement, including Ross's testimony about his drug tolerance and that Floyd's drug use is irrelevant to the charges against Chauvin.
Floyd and I both suffered with an opioid addiction.
And do you know how, I mean, like for your own self,
Yeah.
how you came to be involved, you know, with what kind of drugs and how you became
Use of
involved?
opioids, yes. Both Floyd and I, our story, it's a classic story of how many people get addicted to opioids. We both suffered from chronic pain. Mine was in my neck and his was in his back.
Paramedic Seth Bravender drove the ambulance that arrived at the scene where officers were detaining George Floyd. He testified that the 46-year-old black man had no pulse when they arrived and was already dead by then.
I checked for a pulse.
And did you also check the individual, Mr. Floyd's, pupils?
I did.
And what did you determine at that point?
They were large, dilated.
So you determined that his pupils were large and dilated. What about a pulse?
I did not palpate a pulse.
And when you say palpate, is that you didn't feel or detect a pulse?
I did not detect a pulse.
And what did his condition appear to be to you, overall?
In lay terms, I thought he was dead.
George Floyd's brother sat through the entire trial and he has spoken of his devastation at reliving the ordeal of watching his brother die. Philonis Floyd was speaking on the day that the court was shown a chilling video footage of George Floyd's struggle with 3 police officers trying to arrest him, seen on the body camera footage. The body cam videos include the moment that Floyd was arrested at gunpoint and his desperate pleas that he can't breathe as he is pinned face down. Philonis Floyd is hopeful for justice in the murder trial.
You ain't gonna win.
It's just, he's in there. I just hope that justice gets served and he get convicted. It's not right that African American people, we never get justice.
Derek Chauvin has been accused of killing the 46-year-old George Floyd by kneeling on his neck for 9 minutes 29 seconds. Chauvin has been charged with second-degree murder, third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter in Floyd's death. The most serious charge against the now-fired officer carries up to 40 years in prison.
Mr. Nielsen, do you wish to open it?
Now, for more updates on the George Floyd trial, WION's correspondent Jagrati Dave is now joining us live from Washington, D.C. Now, Jagrati, some moving and provocative testimonies coming in the George Floyd trial. What is the current public perception? Will George Floyd's family get justice?
Yeah, I think the testimony from Courtney Ross, George Floyd's girlfriend, is just adding to the emotional testimonies that the courtroom has seen. If you remember, the 18-year-old who shot that viral video on her cell phone that sparked those protests last summer, she was incredibly emotional, as was the store clerk who took what he believed to be a fake $20 bill from George Floyd, which led to the police being called to the scene. So I think there's, the courtroom has heard a lot of emotional testimony. And I think we also saw today that the prosecution witnesses moving away from some of that harrowing testimony towards, towards accounts from the 2 paramedics who described what they saw when they came to the scene. Described George Floyd as not not having a pulse. And we also heard from the former supervisor of Derek Chauvin, who said that Chauvin violated the police's use of force policies in the way that he restrained George Floyd. So, you know, a variety of prosecution witness testimonies coming forward. And of course, the defense will have their chance to put their case later on, bring their own witnesses, and they are expected to argue that it was not the actions of Derek Chauvin that caused George Floyd's death, but it was a combination of what they are saying, drugs in George Floyd's system, as well as underlying health conditions that caused his death.
Right now, Jagriti, the world in a sense is watching this trial very closely, and is there now fear of violence or any kind of backlash on the streets in America should the verdict go in Chauvin's favour?
Well, Minneapolis, the courtroom itself has been barricaded and protected, and I think the city was on high alert at the start of the trial. The National Guard had been deployed out of concern that there would be protests and uprisings similar to what we saw in cities across the United States, but across the world last summer. We talked about it on this programme at great length, the level of unrest that video that went viral of Derek Chauvin kneeling on George Floyd's neck, the amount of unrest that caused around the world, questions that were being asked about the police and about racial justice in the United States, but of course in other countries as well. So I think there is always at the back of people's minds the possibility of further unrest, given the heightened emotions that this trial and the reasons for this trial have caused.
Right, Jagriti, thank you so much for all your inputs and thank you for joining us on this broadcast. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.